In a world where hustle culture collides with wellness mornings and workplace demands keep evolving, how do we stay sharp without burning out? How do we navigate the endless stream of wellness trends while actually getting results? This is the Work and Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Angela Davies. Drawing from my own journey of wins, stumbles, and honest revelations, I'll be bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations with experts and inspiring guests who've been there, lived it, and found a better way. Together, we'll cut through the noise and workshop what it really means to be well in today's workplace. No more choosing between success and sanity. No more sacrificing health for achievement. Whether you're struggling with burnout, searching for purpose, or simply ready to work smarter, not harder, you're in the right place. This is real talk about real solutions for real people. Let's get into it. Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to welcome Madelyn Carafa, the founder of The Healthy Hustlers, which is a top-rated podcast and thriving brand that's really redefining what it means to live well while chasing your dreams. With a background in corporate communications and a deep passion for well-being and mindset, Madelyn made the bold leap from corporate to create a platform that celebrates real conversations, personal growth, and the power of human connection. And it's a fantastic podcast if you haven't yet listened. Madelyn spent over 5 years in high-level marketing and event management roles, but quickly realized the risk of burnout in that industry was high. And I think a lot of us can resonate with that. And after her marketing career, she launched the Healthy Hustlers podcast, which debuted at #1 health show and #5 on iTunes top charts, which is incredible. And it's now in the top 0.5% globally ranked shows, which is just phenomenal. Through her interviews with inspiring guests, Madelyn's built a loyal community, and she's also the founder of a podcast coaching business, which I have actually been a client of, helping entrepreneurs and creatives find their voice, grow their brand, and share their stories with confidence. Welcome, Madelyn.
Oh, Ange, what an intro. I'm feeling really good right now. Thank you so much.
That's what I like to hear. You're welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited to dive into it today. You've built an incredible brand around health and well-being, and it's called The Healthy Hustlers. But have you ever experienced burnout yourself? And if so, how did you tackle that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of my, reasoning behind wanting to start The Healthy Hustlers was kind of from that burnout experience. So I have heard some quite extreme burnout stories, and mine definitely wasn't extreme. It was probably more a case of every time I went away for work, I was, as you said in the intro, I was working in a marketing and event management role. So lots of travel at a very young age. Kind of felt like I was always on that hamster wheel. And every time I would get home from a work trip, I think one trip in particular that comes to mind, I did 4 countries in 10 days. And then I would just experience this extreme exhaustion, fatigue, colds, all of that sort of stuff, and would be wiped for like a whole week after it. And during all of those experiences, I just always remember thinking, how am I ever going to continue to do this if one day I do want to have children or have a family? And I think I always knew in the back of my mind that I did want 2 things. I wanted a thriving career, but I also did want the opportunity to be a mum one day and to kind of be there for the kids. So I think I kind of made that decision really early on that like this fast paced corporate environment, this expectation, like I just didn't know how it was possible to do and to have capacity to hold other things that I desired in life. So that's when I actually made the shift to, first I actually just got really curious about people at the top of their game who were busy and what it was that they were doing so that they weren't always getting burnt out. And it all really just did come down to their healthy habits. So once I started to inject all of that into my own life, that's when I really was like, you know what, I want to share this with other people. Like I want to share this with the world really, because, implementing these healthy habits and this more focus on my own wellness and my own mental well-being was such a game changer in the way that I could actually show up in the workplace and in that kind of fast-paced environment.
I think it's so important that you came to that conclusion as well, because often we get all the way until the absolute peak of burnout where it's so hard to come back from. And I think you have such a high level of self-awareness to be able to say, hold on a minute, this is not for me. I don't want to go down that path. And there are things that I can do to implement into my life that are actually going to make me thrive as an individual. So I think it's really self-aware of you. And I talk a lot about the importance of self-awareness when it comes to good well-being. How did you have the courage to leave your corporate career? Because I think that's always a really big challenge for people, particularly to focus on making sure that you lived a life that was well and aligned to your values.
Yes. Well, to be honest, a lot of people thought that I was completely crazy. I was actually 6 months off getting married as well. So, we were in deep saving mode. And I never intended to kind of leave my corporate job, to be honest. I think it was kind of a decision that was almost put on me. But when I started the podcast, it did do really well right from the get-go. And the intuitive pulls and nudges I had towards even just launching that, and then I think what came from it so quickly just made me realize straight away, like, this is literally what I'm meant to be doing. Like, I knew from that moment. And as a young kid, I always kind of had this like intrinsic belief, or kind of like knowing that there was something for me, that I was here for something. I used to study things like acting and did a lot of like public speaking, things that were a bit outside the box, I guess, compared to other kids that were passionate about sport and doing that. I was always the girl doing drama who changed schools for acting, and did acting classes outside of school and through university. So there was always this intrinsic pull that there was something. And so when I got the, I guess, thought or desire to do the Healthy Hustlers, and it did have, I guess, that kind of success, or that it did early on, it was just like my intuition was so strong that it was like, this is the thing, like this is what you're meant for. So unfortunately at the time, the marketing job that I was in, they weren't overly comfortable with the divide in maybe passions and focus. So I was actually pulled into, I haven't spoken about this part of it much, but I was pulled into a meeting one Friday morning, and I remember just calling my fiance at the time, now my husband, and I was just like bawling my eyes out, and he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, like I've kind of been told that it's like the podcast or this job. And he's like, well, what do you want, Maddie?
Oh my gosh.
And I'll never remember it, standing on like the corner of this street in Melbourne. I was just like hysterical. And I'm like, I want the podcast. And it's like literally 6 weeks into doing this. And I'm like, I want the podcast. Like nothing has ever felt more aligned. And he's like, well, quit the job and just make it happen. And I was like, really? He's like, yes, if you believe enough in this, then like just go all in and do it. And so I did. Like I literally just walked back in and I said, it's been really nice and I appreciate your time, but yeah, I'm going to really like give this a red hot go. So I did have some kind of, I guess, really good contacts at that time. So I was able to pick up a little bit of freelance marketing, some freelance event management work. And then I really just went all in that first 12 months of building a really beautiful community. And I think having a background in marketing as well as talent management, I did have a really solid understanding of how to turn content into an income. So I'd worked on both sides, one for managing talent and really seeing like, I guess, the deliverables and things that they would create for brands. And then I also had the marketing expertise where I really understood what brands were actually looking for and what they were willing to pay. So this was kind of a time where like the influencer space was really big, but podcasting definitely wasn't. But I think what I knew in my mind that I had was that solid knowledge of actually how to turn content into an income. So I was able to do that in kind of the first 6 months, start making money. And in the first 18 months, I was actually able to fully replace that marketing manager salary through what I was earning with the Healthy Hustlers.
It's amazing, Mads. That's very quick turnaround from a business perspective to be able to replace that income within 18 months. I know a lot of people think, oh, it should happen straight away, but it often takes like 5 to 6 years when people start
Yeah.
a business. So that's phenomenal. I also want to say how integral is a supportive partner in,
Yes.
wanting to realize your dreams? Because I think when you've got
Mhm.
backing like that, it does really make you feel invincible. I know I really resonate with that. And I just think, okay, all
Definitely.
right, they've got
Mhm.
my back. I'm going to go with it. But
Yep.
you spoke a lot in that response about your intuition and knowing in your intuition and your gut what you wanted to do. How do you cultivate that intuition? Because I think it can be this elusive thing that some people feel like
Mm.
they don't know how to connect to. So how do you
Yes.
cultivate that and connect to it?
I think it's really interesting because I would say that I'm super intuitive, and sometimes I kind of so for me personally it's a very easy thing to do and follow, and I feel like I've done it since a kid. And now because I've done it for such a long time, like really listened into those intuitive nudges, I feel like it's kind of just this natural inner compass that I'm so confident in using. But so to strip it back is sometimes like hard because I've got so used to knowing it works, and also having so much evidence in my life that when I do follow
Mm,
those intuitive nudges, that's when the magic happens. But for anyone that's really new to this, first of all, I would say that it's really about creating space. So many of us live, busy lives, and especially, I know a lot of your listeners are corporate girlies, they're doing the commute to work, all of that kind of like stuff that I used to do hours on end. It's actually really hard in those moments to listen to your intuition because there is so much kind of like noise and busyness and, open energy loops in our mind of all the things we need to do. So the first step I would definitely say is actually just creating space. So that might look like a morning walk with no podcast, no music, no anything, just being with your thoughts and allowing a little bit of space for those kind of intuitive nudges to drop in. I also really like to think that your intuition, especially at the start, it's very quiet, but it will always speak first. And then the fear is always second, but the fear comes in very hard and very fast. So it's very easy to listen to the fear because it's so loud and it's so fast. So starting with creating that space and actually just getting used to what it kind of like feels like or seems like in your body to like listen to those little nudges. And then I think,
mm.
yeah, once you've been able to kind of articulate, like, is this intuition or is this fear speaking? Intuition should feel really, really expansive. So it should like give you those full body goosebumps of like excitement, where the fear is something that's obviously
Mm.
going to be keeping you safe, keeping you where you are. So it's going to be those like moments of doubt. It's going to be limiting beliefs, like all of that sort of stuff. So that's how you can kind of really tell the difference between the two. And then I think with getting good at actually like harnessing it and using it, just start really small. So I always think of it as what is, when an intuitive pull comes in, what is one thing I could do right now to move towards this, but actually has the least amount of resistance. So if I use the Healthy Hustlers as an example, when I had that, that was a
Mm.
full intuitive download. Like had started walking to work to my new job through the botanical gardens in Melbourne. So surrounded in the most beautiful nature every morning. No, nothing in my ears, like not listening to anything, just a walk to work in my own thoughts. And that's when kind of the downloads started to really drop in. And so the moment that the idea for Healthy Hustlers came, it was like so hard and fast, and it like took over my whole body. And I was like, oh oh my goodness, this feels so cool. But the first thing, like I knew obviously so much self-doubt was going to come with that because like one, who was I to start a podcast? Podcasting wasn't even a thing. Like there's so much fear then that kind of boiled in from that idea. But what I did that night was I was like, what is the one thing of least resistance I could do? I literally just went home and on on a Word document on my computer, I literally just dot pointed all of the ideas that had kind of like popped in for that. So the name, different guests I could interview, the themes, how it could make money. Like I kind of just had like fun with this document. And the moment that it was actually put on paper and I'd like taken that first step, it was like the vision started to actually grow and that fear left, and all of a sudden the excitement started to kind of burn. So they're the main tips that I would give. But I think it's just really starting slow. And then the moment that you actually start to take that step of least resistance and you implement stuff, you do find that the fear kind of quietens down a little bit and you do get really excited. And, then you can action the next step and the next step. And by doing that and working towards an intuitive pull, you're then building that evidence that your intuition is actually really correct. So, maybe it's not even, a work thing. It could just be something in a friendship, like removing yourself or, not having the small talk anymore. Like it can be smaller things that you trial it with, but it's really then just about building up that evidence that you can actually trust your own intuition and that it knows, best.
All of that is so pertinent, Mads, because I say a lot that silence and solitude is actually a superpower. And if you allow yourself to sit in some silence and solitude, that's when you really unlock your creativity, all of the ideas, connect in with your intuition. Because when I was in corporate, I had a strong gut, like I think I was a really good judge of character, but there's no way like I sat in, hold on, do I really want this? Is this the next role I want to take on? Because I was moving too quickly. And then you said another thing about evidence, and I talk a lot about proof points. And once you have proof points and you gather those proof points, it helps to build momentum. So I think those are two really great tips on developing that gut feel or that intuition is some silence and solitude, and then building up those proof points when you take action.
I think sometimes like a really small shift too is also just like your environments and how you can use silence in a different environment. I even know like at the start of the year, I was just feeling a bit overwhelmed with like, the businesses and where they're both going and what I wanted from each. And it was like a lot of fear was kind of popping in and, maybe a bit of imposter syndrome. And I just took myself, I was back at my parents' house, which is like a really beautiful coastal town. And I just took myself for a little walk and sat on the cliff overlooking the ocean. Nothing in my ears, I literally just said, universe, like higher self, please provide me with guidance right now on this, and like ask the question. And I just sat there with my feet in the sand, and I didn't kind of like try to pull anything. I just like sat in silence and in stillness. And in like 5 minutes, honestly, I had like the exact answer of like the clear next steps I needed to take. And it's literally just like unlocked so much for me now. This last quarter of what to focus on. And I just can keep coming back to that and being like, no, that was my guiding compass that I need. Like stay true to that and just see what kind of comes from that. So you can even just have those little moments that you kind of play with as well.
And it's such a short investment of time too. It's not like you have to sit there for an entire day, like in a monastery and, meditate or whatever. You can have sort of a little bit of time at the beach and sort of just see what comes in. So that's a great tip. Now, you shared some great tips already, but on the podcast, you obviously interview some super interesting guests around health and wellness. What is one health or well-being or mindset tip that has stuck with you the most of the people you've interviewed?
Oh, that is so hard, to be honest. I think a quote I actually heard through a podcast guest, which I just resonated with so much, was that no one will ever remember what you said, but they'll always remember the way you made them feel. And I really took that on as beautiful advice. Obviously, being in the space that I'm in where I talk a lot, I really kind of think that I took that advice on as like that is so like the way that I'm making people feel, if it's a guest, if it's people that join my programs, if it's just like people on the street, you know, like people that maybe come up and say, oh, I listened to the podcast, like, or even in DMs, I'm like, I really want to
Mm,
make sure people feel good in my energy because I talk a lot, but you know, that's not what they're going to remember. They're actually going to remember the way that I made them feel in a moment. But there is honestly like so much, and I think from doing it for seven years now, there's so many different pieces of advice that have really stuck at different seasons of life. So
mm.
another analogy, which has probably served me really well in the last few years, that came from the podcast. I actually think it might be a Bram Brown analogy, but a podcast guest brought it to the show and was speaking about this concept of looking at things as either glass or plastic balls. So, glass balls being ones that if you drop them, they'll shatter. Plastic balls being ones that are a bit more durable, and if you drop them, they'll bounce. And she kind of spoke about this
Mm,
philosophy of in each season of life is really kind of making a decision on this is going to be my plastic balls and this is going to be my glass balls. And that has really helped me, I think, from the transition of, you know, when I first started the podcast, I could be working on it 7 days a week, all over the weekend. You know, I used to travel the country and interview people in their homes,
mm.
in their offices. You know, now I've got two kids, one's a school age kid. Like
Yeah.
my lifestyle and seasons of life are so different now. And so that kind of philosophy has really been a really good kind of like guiding, I guess, light or compass the last few years of like, okay, Maddie, you don't have capacity for it all right now. So what is it that you want to prioritize this season? And for, you know, a lot of the last few years, my business has had to be a plastic ball. Like I've had to let it drop and be totally
Mm,
okay with that and confident
yeah.
that it's going to bounce back up. And my kids have been the glass ball, whether now, you know, they're getting a little bit older, they're at school,
Mm,
like they're kind of becoming the plastic ball because they don't need me 100% of the time. So that's something that has really
mm.
kind of like served me really well. But like I said, there's so many different takeaways throughout different periods of life that I've taken on board. And I think that that's what I love so much about podcasts and these kind of conversations is that there is always something for you wherever you're kind of at. But yeah,
Mm.
they're two that probably come to mind that I feel like have really, really helped.
I really love that analogy of the glass and the plastic balls, and
Mm.
particularly the fact that it will oscillate. Your glass and
Yes.
your plastic balls will change over time,
Hmm.
but about being aware of what season that you're in. And I think it also speaks to this concept of balance, right? You know, so
Yeah.
often people talk about balance, and I personally don't believe in
Mm.
balance. I think things oscillate through life, and there'll be times when you invest more in one thing and then more in the other, and being okay with that. So I think it's a really,
Yeah.
solid analogy. You talk a lot about mindset too on the podcast, and I know you love all things mindset, and I think it's so important. What is one of your biggest tips around mindset, or something that's really changed the way that you've approached the way that you live and work?
Mm. So I think for me, like, and I always feel like it's really important to say this because I know we weren't all raised the same, but believe I was raised with a lot of privilege, not because of money or wealth or anything like that, purely just from the values and the beliefs that my parents instilled in me from a really young age. So I grew up with a really big focus on gratitude, perspective, you know, empathy, always really having to put myself in other people's shoes. And so I feel like growing up with that and having like quite a positive mindset
Mm,
instilled in you from a child, looking at things in a, I guess, glass half full approach was so natural to me from, you know, the
mm,
very beginning of life almost. So, from a mindset perspective, I feel like it wasn't until later on in my journey. So, especially when I shifted from the corporate world to the healthy hustlers, there was a lot of like limiting beliefs that came up. And one of them was definitely that I was not smart enough. And that was definitely a
mm,
school belief that kind of was, you know, I guess, built in me because I wasn't overly academic. I loved, like I said, drama and acting and all of that at school. And, I only just passed year 12. I just got into, a marketing degree. I very much had the focus of like P's get degrees kind of
Yeah.
headspace. So when I really stepped outside of my comfort zone and started the Healthy Hustlers, there was a lot of limiting beliefs that were popping up. One being that I wasn't smart enough, one that like, who am I to do this? And that's when I really started, I guess, to dive a bit more into mindset and really understand like how much our mind can actually block us from showing up for our dreams, from our desires. And so as I went on in my journey, there was, beliefs and blocks around like, visibility, I guess, and, a real fear of judgment. So I kind of started to get more and more curious about different mindset tools and strategies that I could use to, I guess, really like unblock them and for me to continue to show up to my full potential, because I had all of these kind of, I guess, like I said, intuitive nudges and beliefs and stories that were playing, but there was a lot in my mind that wasn't actually allowing me to like move forward to my full capacity. So that's when I started to get super passionate about it and learn a bit more, I guess, about our subconscious and conscious beliefs. And so I guess when it comes to, our overall mindset, there's probably nothing in particular that fully stands out. But I think one of the biggest things that I know to be true and have learned on my own journey is that no kind of like feeling is permanent. And so because I did do a lot of work around my limiting beliefs when I started the Healthy Hustlers, and I did have that beautiful foundation of, like a very positive upbringing. Then when I stepped into motherhood, I feel like that was another big journey of my mental health. And that really kind of showed me that no feelings are permanent. And during that period, I went through a really, really dark postpartum journey with my son and had a lot of very dark thoughts, a lot of very dark, long, dark periods of time where I was like an absolute shell of myself. Like I didn't even recognize who I was in the mirror. And I think that in itself taught me also a lot about our mind and how important it is to kind of really be nurturing ourselves and the environments in which we put ourselves in. So at that time, I found myself very much following, say, a lot of accounts that were, talk about the struggle of motherhood and how hard motherhood was. And although it was so real and it was relatable and there's so many people doing beautiful things in that space, it was not serving me at all. It was like pulling me deeper into that hole of like how hard this is. And so I really had to lean on my mindset in that time of like, one, no feeling or, period is actually permanent. Like we are always ebbing and flowing, and it's actually okay to feel sad and to feel emotions. And I think the biggest thing that I took from that period was when you are moving through a challenging time, to actually just allow yourself the space to feel it on every single level, because you're going to move out of it so much quicker. Some books that have really helped me is The Power of the Subconscious Mind. It's by Dr. Joseph Murphy. That is so, so fascinating on just, the power of our subconscious mind and how that works. Another thing that's really helped me with my mindset has been hypnosis. So really kind of bringing awareness to my limiting beliefs. So when I know that something's holding me back, getting really curious on that. So I'll just journal on it and I'll kind of like ask myself, like, what's the worst thing that happens if I say, actually, work towards this side hustle? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I dive deeper. Then when I write that answer, I'll go, what's the worst thing that can happen if that happens? What's the worst thing? So I get really curious on it, so it loses a bit of its power. And then I do hypnosis. So I'll actually go to a hypnosis therapist, kind of tell them what the limiting belief is that I'm working on, and they will tailor a session that will kind of help you rewire that belief from a subconscious level. And then from a mindset perspective, I also integrate a lot of that into my nighttime. So I really only read books that are kind of expanding or nourishing my mind. So at the moment, I'm reading How to Love Better by young Pablo, I think his name
Oh,
is.
young Pablo.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that's a really beautiful book. I think that's just beautiful with human connection. And
Mm,
also just, yeah, then also working with a therapist on rewiring a few of those subconscious
mm.
beliefs. So I know that's probably a lot bigger answer to what you said because it's not necessarily a
It's
tip,
amazing.
but I feel like your mindset, like I'm very much of the belief that you can have like 80% of the knowledge or the strategy or the know-how, but if your like mindset isn't aligned, you are actually like without the belief and without the mindset, you're never going to achieve the thing that you want.
Our minds are so powerful, Mads. And it's, there's so much more study and research to back this up
Mm,
now as well. I think even 5 years ago, if we were talking about this, people would have thought we were
woo
like,
woo.
oh, woo,
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But our minds are so powerful. Even, for example, if you're looking to buy a certain car and then
Yes.
you see the car
Totally.
everywhere, right? Like
Yes.
our brains look for what we're focused on. And
Yes.
so it speaks a lot to what you're saying. If we're
Mm,
focused on not being able to do it or the fear or the worry, we'll find more of that
yep.
as opposed to focusing on what's the good that can happen.
Exactly. And
I
I
love
love
how
that
you.
quote, what you focus on grows or expands. And it's
Mm,
so exactly what you just said then. Like whatever you choose to focus on will expand in negative or positive. And I
yeah.
think some of the key people, like what you were saying too, around like once upon a time, or even 5 years ago, this would have been woo woo. But there's so many
Mm,
ridiculously intelligent, highly like successful, knowledgeable, studied, academic people who speak into this now. Like Dr. Joe Dispenza has been incredible for
mm.
my growth. Marissa Peer, she's kind of like the OG in, I guess, hypnosis world. I do a lot of her like tracks and, signed up to her website and stuff. A lot of those people, like, you know, even if you look at like Lewis Howes, Jay Shetty, Gabby Bernstein,
Mm.
like they're all phenomenal people who are being such big voices for this stuff because it's actually not woo woo. There's so much science and evidence to back your mindset. And if you pour into that, the results that will actually come from it.
And I think the beauty of it is that it is self-fulfilling and there's
Yes.
self-efficacy in it
Hmm.
because I'm a huge believer in
Yeah.
self-efficacy, i.e., we have the power to really guide our own future. Of
Mm.
course, there are adversities that happen and that's life and it doesn't mean that everything's easy, but I do feel like there's a level of self-efficacy in when you focus on the things that you can do in your mindset, it's quite remarkable what can come off the
Mm.
back of it and just taking action as well. I
Yes.
think, once you do that, it allows you to take that action. Thank you for sharing too so vulnerably about your postpartum depression. It's really, really challenging and I'm
Mm.
sure it can feel incredibly lonely.
Mm.
How did you come out of that, Mads?
It definitely is lonely, I think, and it's a really interesting one for me because at the time when you're in that darkness, you just have no idea why it's happening. And I honestly
Mm,
felt like all of these beautiful, mindset rituals, practices that I had preached on the
mm.
podcast that was so instilled in me as a child and a teenager, it was like I could not physically reach for them. Like, even thinking
Yeah.
about one thing to be grateful for was like the hardest thing to do, which now being back in a healthier mindset is just wild for me to comprehend because I live in a beautiful home. I have two beautiful, healthy children. I have all of this amazing
Mm,
support, like healthy food on the table every day, like do not go without. Yet in those
mm.
moments of darkness, I could not even like find something that I was grateful for. And it just taught me a lot, I think, again, about the mind and about like, how quickly that can shift. But I think what pulled me out was the people around me, to be honest. Like I was very fortunate in that time that, my dad had actually seen other close family members go through this journey. So he spotted it very early on with me.
Mm,
And so, it was a very accepted conversation in my family where I said, like, I'm really struggling. Like, this is so hard and I don't know why it's so hard. And so I think having their support was, probably one of the biggest
mm,
things that pulled me out. And I think just really taking it one step at a time. So I kind of stripped things back. I really did use that kind of glass plastic ball philosophy. And like
Mm,
in that moment, I was like, the only two things that I need to focus on are my children and my mental health. So
mm,
each day I would just kind of think like, I started to create a bit of a, I guess, mental toolkit or virtual toolkit. I don't know what you would call it, but it was like, what are the things that I can do in each moment to make me feel good? So if the kids are with me, it would be just like put on some frequency music playing in the home. So a nice frequency music would be playing all the time. If the kids were with me, I could like put on some fun dance music that we could just like shift the
mm,
energy from. It was so simple. If the kids weren't with me, I could go for a walk in nature. Very
mm,
small steps, very, very small steps of just giving myself a little bit of space, a few things that I could do to make me feel better. And then obviously, because I would have those little moments where it would feel lighter, it would feel like I could see a bit of light at the end of the
mm.
tunnel. It was just a like day by day work in progress kind of thing. I also think taking the pressure off myself. Like there was a big part of me thinking I needed to keep holding everything. Like I was like, I
Yeah.
need to keep all of this going. Like I need to, I felt like a failure. And so really switching that script and just telling
Mm,
myself it's actually okay to feel like this right now. And,
yeah.
like I said earlier in the episode, like then giving myself permission to fully feel. And I think that was probably one
Mm,
of the best things that I did was one, yeah, give myself permission to feel the way I was. So I'd be like, this is your heart and this is okay. It's not permanent. And then I would just allow myself to feel the intensity of the emotions every day, reminding myself that they will pass. Like there will be a time when I don't feel these. And I actually remember the moment when I realized, like, whoa, I'm actually fully out of this. Like, I saw my son, I was getting
mm.
ready, having a shower, and I saw my son walk into me in the bathroom. And he was like almost 2 at this stage. And I just had this moment where, like, gratitude just filled my body. And I saw him and I
Mm,
thought, oh my God, he's this like happy, healthy little boy. Like work was starting to go really well for me again. Georgia, my daughter, was thriving at kinder. I just had this full body moment where I was like overflowing with gratitude and
mm.
I was just so grateful for that past version of me who just like gave myself permission to like be in that as hard as it
Yeah.
was. It was like the moment I stopped forcing myself to get out of it and allowed myself to just be in it and do the things that I could without pressure. It was like it just lightened, like the load of it just lightened so,
Mm.
so much.
Oh, I got chills when you said about that gratitude moment too, Mads. And
Mm,
thank you so much for sharing. I think what you've said really reinforces that it's the very small things done every
yeah.
day and the importance of the support and the relationships we have in our lives that ultimately can get us through
Hmm.
these mental health challenges. And
Yeah.
I think what you've shared is so powerful in reminding ourselves that these feelings will not last
Mm,
forever.
yeah.
They may feel like they're never going to go away,
Yes.
but if you can remind yourself every single day, okay, they're here again today, they might not be tomorrow,
Yeah.
and just keep reminding yourself that
Hmm.
they will not last forever. So I think what you've
Exactly.
shared is really, really important.
Mm.
So thank you for sharing your experience with that. And I know that it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
And I think in those times, actually, when you're speaking about that, then the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations is actually what I started. And there's a morning one.
Mm,
It's about 20 minutes, which I won't lie, I did find it really hard to commit to 20 minutes. But
yeah.
what I did start doing, really small habits, was getting up before the kids in the morning, and I would actually just have
Mm,
a shower and get ready. Even just the energy shift of me being able to get in like a semi nice outfit and put on some makeup,
yeah.
like that in itself took me out of like kind of a bit of a negative spiral. But the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations, once I'd have the shower, if I still had the time, I'd just plug it in. And he really focuses on like your future and getting energy from the
Mm,
future version. And I think that's where I was able to have that intensity of the gratitude when I saw my son, because I was like, that's what I'd pictured. Like I'd pictured these moments of this happy, thriving little baby boy, me back at work, all of that. And I don't think I would have had that awareness if I wasn't doing the Dr. Joe dispenser meditations.
Mm.
But that really helped from a frequency perspective as well, most days, knowing that like there was a future ahead of me. Like there was days that are going to feel
Yes.
easier and lighter.
Yeah, I think that hope, hope is
Yes.
so important
Yes.
for recovery in anything. I just taught a mental health first aid course on the weekend, and something that I speak a lot about in that is giving the person you're helping or who's struggling hope that there is
Mm,
recovery and they will come out the other side. So it sounds
yes.
like that's what that meditation did for
Definitely,
you.
definitely did.
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that. And you're thriving now, Mads, and I love seeing it. I'd love to finish with one last question for you. Looking ahead, what big project, goal, wellness goal have you got on the horizon or you're currently focused on?
Oh, great question. I feel like especially the last 18 months, like getting back into business, I was so hyper focused on every goal, every investment being about like my mind, my skill, my craft, which has
Mm,
been amazing and, has paid off from a business perspective. But at the end of last year, again, going back to intuition, and I'm very spiritual, I really believe that the universe is always communicating with us. If it's through like signs,
mm,
symbols, quotes on Instagram, like I always take everything as communication. So at the end of last year, you might have seen it, but the analogy and this, I guess, quote around nurturing your own garden and the butterflies will come.
mm.
So I've always kind of been of the belief that you attract what you are, not what you desire. And so this quote kept coming up. I think Lewis Howes maybe posted it first, and then another podcaster I follow listened to, he shared about, if we actually focus on building a beautiful garden, butterflies will come versus us constantly
Mm,
chasing the butterflies, they'll just fly away.
yeah.
And, if you look at that from a perspective, from mindset, energetics, like for me, I really took that as if I nurture my own garden, being my internal world, all of these desires and visions that I have, I'm going to be a vibrational match for them. And so they are going to
Mm,
land, those doors are going to open. So I really had a big focus going on into this year, I guess less business like strategy and investment there, and actually just nurturing my own internal world. So I've actually
yeah.
just signed up or like paid to go on my first ever retreat in
Oh,
June in
yes.
Byron Bay, which I'm so excited for. One of my beautiful friends, Davina's hosting it at the most amazing place in Byron Bay. So that is very much just a full mind body experience, which I'm so
Mm.
excited for. And yeah, lots of saunas, lots of me time at the moment, no guilt. Finally signed up to a Pilates membership, which I have like avoided
I love
for so
hearing
long. Like I've just done casual
that.
classes. I've always made the excuse of like, oh, it's too hard with the kids. This year I'm like,
Mm,
no, it's actually really about nurturing my internal world so that I am a vibrational match for all of these big visions and desires that I have.
mm.
So huge focus on the wellness side of things this year. So I guess really it's just a huge focus on my own well-being and, internal world this year from spiritual and wellness perspective.
Do you know, that makes me so happy to hear, Mads, because I think so often we focus on external,
Mm,
everything external. What are all the learning and the skills and the
yes.
things that we need to develop to be better?
Mm,
But actually take it, and there's so much out there telling us these
yes.
are all the things you need to do, and do this marketing course and do this sales course
Yep.
and, get this business coach, all those sorts of
Yeah.
things. But I think true growth, mental health, wellness actually starts from when you invest in yourself and your
Hmm.
self awareness and
Yep.
looking after your personal growth. So I
It's so
love to hear
true.
that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think, I'm such a believer that we actually have most of the answers that we need within.
Mm,
That's going back to that intuition piece too. So it's like sometimes we do get so caught, I think, especially as ambitious,
hmm.
entrepreneurial corporate women who do have big, ambitious goals. It's so easy to almost get caught in that a bit of a trap, really, of thinking we
Yes.
always need to be doing something more from a learning
Hmm.
perspective. And I'm like, actually, you already know so much. So this year I was like, what if you just
Yes.
implemented all of the things that you actually already know, and in that process just like fully filled up your own cup so that your vibrational frequency is so electric and so aligned to what it is that you actually want to create.
Oh, do you know what? I'm in exactly the same place as you right
Yeah.
now. And you know what's so funny is when you start doing that, as you say, the butterflies or the work, it all starts coming in because
Mhm.
people, I think, really feel that
It's
energy.
so
So,
true. Yeah. And I really
yeah.
think that like your energy is your currency. Like if your
Mhm.
energy is on point and aligned, like it speaks so much louder than any word that you can say. I think it speaks
Yeah.
before you even enter a room. So to be able to nurture that is literally one of the best
Mm.
investments I believe you can make in yourself.
What an awesome way to finish this conversation, Mads. You've shared so much with us, and I appreciate your vulnerability and all of those really practical tips that I feel like people can take away and start to invest in themselves and really nurture themselves. So,
Uh,
thank you so much for your time. I've absolutely loved our chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love seeing you in your magic here. It is so incredible seeing what you're doing and, yeah, all the goodness that you're putting into the world. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me on Work and Wellness. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, someone in your network might need to hear this too. Share it with a colleague or friend who could use these insights. I'd love to keep the conversation going, so find us on Instagram at Mind Your Grit, where we share daily tips and continue these discussions. And if you found value in today's episode, please take time to rate and review the show. It makes such a huge difference and helps other people discover conversations they might really need. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Each week, we're building a community of people who believe that success and well-being go hand in hand. You can find the notes, resources, and links from today's episode at mindyourgrit.com. This is Work and Wellness with Angela Davies. Your work matters, your wellness matters, and this is where it all comes together. See you next week.